You were talking about before we started that marriage is a technology.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? What is the technology of marriage?
I think anything that's designed to solve a problem is a technology, right? So, I mean, this mug is a technology, you know, and what is the problem to which this technology is a solution? Well, it's the problem of I can't hold hot tea in my hand.
Yeah.
It's a problem of I don't want to use, and kudos to you for using non-disposable ones, that zero waste you listen to her. And the truth is that it's designed to solve a problem. So the next question is, who has that problem? Well, you know, anyone who wants to drink a beverage has that problem, you know. And the next question, and I think the most important question, is what problems does it unintentionally create? Okay, so every technology is a Faustian bargain in the sense that it solves a problem and it creates a problem.
Now you got to clean it. You got to use the water.
Exactly.
To wash
you have
it,
to now. You have to find stylish ones. I mean, you went classic plain, but you got to find ones with witty sayings on them, and it can break. And now my favorite mug was broken, and how am I going to replace it? I mean, again, some of these problems are silly little problems in exchange for really great benefits, but most people never ask themselves the question, the technology of marriage, which is a man-made technology, a human-made technology. We got together and said, hey, let's create this legal contract.
Governed by a state.
Right, governed by the state. Let's come up with something let's turn a lover into a relative. You know, let's find a way to turn this into a legally binding contract. And people just go and sign up for this technology. And they spend more time thinking about what cake they should serve at the ceremony than thinking about what did I just sign on for and why did I sign on for it and what are some problems it might create for me in exchange for the things that it solves for me. And by the way, will it even solve the problem that I'm trying to have it solve? And one of the things I talk about in the book is, you know, if you got married to solve the problem of being alone, you might be alone still in your marriage. Like if you got married because you want to have sex, you want to have more sex, you know, being married is no more a guarantee of getting sex than living near a restaurant is a guarantee of getting fed.
Right.
You know, it doesn't mean just because you're in it, you're going to receive the benefit that you think you're going to receive of it. And how many couples before they get married really sit down and say, hey, we're going to sign up for this technology. What do you want to get from it? What should I be wanting to get from it? How will it change over the years? That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't happen, how are we then surprised that it doesn't work 53% of the time?
53% is now the statistic.
Is the divorce rate.
And the divorce rate, then more probably still don't work, but they're in it.
Exactly. So that's the part, and it's funny that you go there because that's where I go with it. So 53% is already terrifying, right? If I said to you there's a 53% chance when you walk out of this room you get hit in the head with a bowling ball.
Yeah, you're probably not going to go out.
Or you're going to wear a helmet at a minimum,
exactly.
right? At a minimum you're going to wear a helmet, but you probably wouldn't go out. Now let's look at that number though, 53% and then divorce.
That's U.S. or global?
U.S.
U.S.
U.S. only, okay? Now think about what percent stay together for the kids?
That should get divorced, but stay together?
Can't stand each other.
But they stay together.
They stay together because they don't want to upset the kids or they don't want to give away their stuff.
I would say another 75% stay together even though they want to get divorced.
Okay, so let's say another 25% of married people, let's say. I mean, so now we've got a technology with a failure rate over 75%. Okay? So now, what percentage stay together for religious reasons? Probably a declining percentage over the years, but let's say
more.
5%.
That might be the same as kids, and might be the same. Yeah.
So if I say there's a technology with a failure rate of 80%, Toyota had a 0.0001% brake failure.
Nice save.
On their, thank you, a 0.001% brake failure on one of their vehicles, and they recalled all of the vehicles.
Yeah.
So if I said to you 80% of technology,
and we still use it. Yeah.
Not only do we use it, we celebrate its use.
Yeah, it's part of our culture. And we're shamed if we're not married almost.
Absolutely. Well, because it's considered a sign that you're not mature and forward thinking.
And we're ashamed when we're divorced.
Right.
But now we're being celebrated to get out of marriages if it's not what we want or if we're not getting what we want.
That's a trend that's definitely starting to change. So I think
like leave him, divorce him, or whatever,
Right. Well, I think as self-actualization, became more of a thing, and after the 1970s, people started thinking about themselves and their happiness. It wasn't just about the unit anymore. It was about finding yourself. Then it became more acceptable to be self-interested. I'm not going to say selfish because not all self-interested behavior is selfish. But it became more acceptable to say, I'm not happy. You know, I married this person when I was 20, and now I'm 40. And shockingly, I'm not the same person at 40 that I was when I was 20. And now I'm a different person, and it's no longer a good fit. You know, I mean, the analogy I tell people is if I said to you right now, you can have any car you want, what car would you have?
Well, I just got a Tesla.
I have a Tesla too. Yeah,
I actually don't care about cars at all.
I'm not a big car guy either.
But I got one for tax reasons, actually.
Cool.
And I had a 1991, I still have a 1991 Cadillac Eldorado. That had like 60,000 miles on it. I Uber everywhere. I don't really use it.
Car, if you have any car you want. If you ask
but I like the
people,
Tesla. I like the Tesla because it's fuel efficient. It's, you know, I just wish I had a bigger battery.
You're a pragmatic guy. You ask most people. You ask most people that question.
They're gonna go Ferrari,
Lamborghini. I want a Maserati. Now, if I then said to them, okay, you get one car though. Whatever car you pick, that's the car you're going to have for the rest of your life. Suddenly, a Lamborghini is a terrible idea because you can't put a car seat in it for a kid. And you can't, you know, when you're 80 years old, get into that car, right? So if you are only allowed to have one car, you got to find a car that not only makes sense when you're 20 and 30 and 40, but when you're 70 and when you have kids and when the kids have gone away. So again, like a minivan that might make sense when you got 3 kids, when the kids go off to college, that minivan no longer makes sense. Well, marriage is a technology where you're signing on with one person and saying, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be with this person. And that's a very challenging thing. But here's the thing. I actually think people give more thought to the car they're buying than they do really to the technology of marriage and what about it specifically they like or don't like.
What training or information do you wish every couple would go through before signing up for the technology of marriage?
That's a great question. I think, you know, if you buy a house, you get a lead paint disclosure, you get a HUD disclosure that talks about the loan, you get all kinds of disclosures, right? You sign a will, there's all these pages that explain to you in great detail, you know, what's happening when you sign that will. You get married, you don't even get a pamphlet. You don't even get like a one-page brochure that says, by the way, this is the most legally significant thing other than dying that you will ever do legally. And you don't get any information about what just happened. So the first thing I would say is I think everybody who's going to get married should have an hour consultation with a divorce lawyer. Absolutely.
So they should go into your office before.
Yes, but for a different reason.
For a different reason.
Prophylactically.
Yes,
they should come in proactively and learn about what's about to happen legally. What's about to happen to my rights? You know, what's about to change in terms of how I own property, the financial obligations I'll have to this person. I would also say one of the best things they could do is talk to someone candidly who's been married for an extended period of time. You know, that's not something we do. We're not encouraged to be honest about our relationships. We're not. I mean, one of the things you talk about in Mask of Masculinity that I loved is about, particularly for men, but I think it's true for women too, we don't share candidly what's really going on in our lives. We're in a very curated society where you put up on social media the best picture and the best vacation photos and the best of everything we're doing, and we don't share with each other the challenges. We don't share with each other even really relevant information. Like when I meet a couple who's been together for 20 years, I want to know, I mean, I love the story, how did you meet? And, you know, how many times a week do you have sex? Who initiates it? Do you ask, do you always do the same stuff because you've been together for 20 years and you know what each other like? Or like, do you like call an audible every once in a while and just do some wacky thing? Like, what is it, like, what is it really like, the day-to-day of your relationship? And so many people, I mean, you've been in relationships, I've been in relationships, so many people just don't talk honestly. Even when I'm with my guy friends, you know, do we really talk honestly about the day-to-day of our relationships, the way we talk to the women in our lives, like the nickname they have for us or the nickname we have for them? Again, it's private to some degree information, but if we could share that stuff a little more, we'd have a lot more accurate of a perception of where our relationship stands in the scheme of things and how we're doing. You know, because I really think there's this perception that people have of, you know, oh, well, we're only having sex this many times a week. And it's like, well, okay, is that a lot? Is that too little? Like, you have nothing to compare it to.
Right.
You know, so in marriage, there's no way to know if you're doing well at it. Because you can't say, well, we have fights every now and then. Well, okay, people have fights every now and then. But if you have a fight every week, that might be a lot. But how would you know? What would you compare it to?
Right.
So I would say one of the best things you can do to people who are considering getting married is put them in a room with people who've been good at that technology, who've managed to not only endure marriage, but endure it and still like it.
And thrive.
Right.
Yeah, and thrive.
Right. And still say, you know what, I'd sign on for this again.
Yeah.
Like in a room full of people, I'd still pick this person.
Yeah, that's cool.
And how many of those opportunities do we really get to talk to people that way about the relationship?
Not many, yeah. And maybe also talk to someone who's been through divorce and ask them what didn't work and why didn't it work and what were the
where
things
did
to
it
look out
break
for.
down?
Yeah.
Exactly. See, one of the principles that inspired me to write the book was the idea that, again, I hate using car metaphors because I'm not a car guy either, but it's the best analogy I can think of in the sense that if when you bought a car, you did every bit of preventative maintenance that a mechanic told you to do.
You change the oil every 2 months
right?
or whatever.
Yeah, my sister's a dentist, and she always says to me, by the time your tooth hurts, you're screwed.
Prevent it.
Yeah,
floss every day, not after you get the cavity.
If you do all the stuff she tells you to do when you go see her, your teeth are going to do well.
Yeah.
So it's, for me, who knows more about how a car breaks down than a mechanic, right? So I know people are in my office and I get a very candid view of them and I get to talk to them, and I have been very blessed that people trust me with tremendously personal information. And so what I wanted to do with that information is just find a way to leverage that into some kind of wisdom that people could use and say, you know what? Just don't do what they did. When we were talking about titles for the book, it was a hilarious escapade because, one of the first ideas was, well, we'll call it Everyone Screwing Everyone, because it was about how people just abuse each other in the process of divorce and how they're really taking advantage of each other. And then we said, well, no, that's too pessimistic. And we said, well, maybe we could, just call it, vows and talk about like the promises that people make. But it's not really the promises that are interesting. It's the way that people go in with good intentions with those promises and they just can't keep it together.
Can't keep it,
So I really think that for me, the best thing we can do with anybody is to, show them a model of success, right? And show them a model of failure. And look, you've said it a million times on this show that you learn just as much from your successes as your failures. You might learn more from your failures even to some degree. So we don't have those role models. We don't have relationship role models, And, one of the things you talked about masculinity when you're talking about Neil Strauss and his marriage and how he says, look, it was my stuff. It wasn't like I said, oh, I don't like marriage because I don't like this about it and I don't like that it would force me to do this and force me to do that. And really what it was is he just didn't want to look at his own stuff. Yeah. And he felt like to have a good marriage, he'd have to look at his own stuff, which is absolutely true. And terrifying. And most of what my book is about, you got to look at your stuff. If you want to be successful in this technology, you got to look at it, own it, and share it with this person.
And be aware and be honest with the person about who you are and what you want, what you don't want. Now you were married for how long?
I was married for 12 years.
12 years. Yeah. Got divorced.
Yep, got divorced.
While you were a divorce attorney.
Yes, while I was a divorce attorney.
So you're hearing these stories every day.
And going through
your marriage.
But my marriage, I think, benefited from my experience as a divorce lawyer.
Because you knew the cues of what not to do or what was going to work.
But it was hurt by the fact that I love what I do for a living and was so consumed with it that I worked constantly. My ex-wife, who is one of my dearest friends to this day,
that's good.
She's remarried to an amazing guy who's a great stepdad to my sons who are now older. They're both in college. But I'm very blessed. I mean, I've had an experience of divorce where I'm still close friends with her. I'm friends with her husband. And I'm very lucky for that. Because I look at it like, there's a lot of people I love that I wouldn't want to be married to.
Sure.
And she's one of them. She's someone I love. She's someone I appreciate, who I think is just an amazing person. But we don't have the exact ingredients that you need to be successful in marriage.
Long-term,
because we met when we were 17. And what we wanted when we were 17, 18, 19, 22, when we got married, 24, when we had kids, when we turned around and we're in our 30s, we went, we don't actually have that much in common. And so either I'm going to have to stop being who I actually am. Like, I love to travel. You don't love to travel. You love, you know, I mean, from silly things. You love shabby chic furniture, and I like very zen aesthetics, you know? Like, you love this kind of movie, and I love this kind of movie. And you reach a point where you kind of go, well, do we white knuckle it now because we don't want to quit something that isn't working? Or do we say, you know what, let's call this. Let's call this, and let's find someone who feeds us in the right way, and see if, or just be alone for the right reasons, you know? Right. And I'm very blessed that the person who I was married to was mature enough to see it the same way, and to have that painful but really wonderful conversation that so few people can have. And that is to say, look, this thing was successful. You know, we both are leaving this better people than we were when we came into it. And we're leaving it with 2 kids that are the exact chemistry of the 2 of us, and they're made up of the 2 of us. But we're going to kind of take our different paths now, and let's still love each other. Let's still respect each other.
Conscious uncoupling, it's called, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the term that's been handed to it. But you know, the truth is I think people have been doing it for years. You just don't hear about it. It's not that interesting. My divorce is the least interesting thing about me. It really is. Like, if I said to you, like, you know, tell me 10 things about yourself, the fact that I'm divorced wouldn't make a list, because the fact that I tried to marry someone and stay with them forever and it didn't work out isn't that interesting. It's not that unique. You know, what you hear about in the people who talk about their divorces incessantly are people who were wounded by them. And now they've been victimized by their divorce. And so it becomes a tremendous part of their identity.
And they hold on to it for a while, and they talk about it, and here's what happened.
Absolutely. And so, you know, they're the silent, you know, there's a huge number of people that had divorces like mine, where the marriage just ended, it ended in a friendly fashion, they continue to co-parent successfully together, and they both live their lives.
There's not this pain and resentment for years.
No, and I have to tell you, as a divorce lawyer, as a practicing divorce lawyer, a huge, I would say more than 50% of the people that I represent, it's that kind of transaction. It really is, that it's just 2 people that their time is done, and now we just have to figure out how to divide up the things they have and work out the schedules with the kids.
That's good to know, 50%.
Yeah, I would say at least 50%.
That's good.
But the thing is, the other 50%
are louder,
are so much more interesting. I mean, so much. It's like, because really, who wants to hear about, like, oh, I talked to my ex-wife yesterday, and she's lovely. You know, she's moving to Rochester soon. Like, we're just, you know, that's her life.
It's the drama on the train wreck.
She threw a bat at me. She set my car on fire. Like, it's way more interesting. You know.
Oh man, do you feel like, you know, marriage? I hear this all the time. It's something that's not going to be easy, right? There's going to be challenges. There's going to be fights or arguments, and there's going to be some things that you're not going to agree on. If you agree on everything, awesome, but it doesn't sound like there's many marriages that are always perfect and always smooth. After 10, 20, 30 years, there's going to be some conflict. So does that mean, in your opinion, that we should just be like, you know what, let's just throw in the towel when it gets too challenging? Or, you know what, it's getting challenging, that's when we got to dive in deeper and like come together as a marriage because we signed up for this?
It's a great question. I would say the following. I think one of the most common things people will say to you about marriage is, you know, marriage is hard. Marriage is hard. I don't know that that's true. I think if you consider paying attention hard, then marriage is hard. If you don't consider paying attention hard, then I don't think marriage has to be hard. I think that it's, again, not to use the metaphor again, but, you know, losing weight is harder than maintaining your weight. And I really think, you're going to have challenges. You're not necessarily going to have fights. You're going to have challenges. Life is going to throw challenges in your way. Illness, adversity, career issues, you know, day-to-day miscommunications with each other. If you're not paying attention, those things get huge. And then the big things happen. So people come in and they go, I'm getting divorced because he's sleeping with his secretary. You are. That's a great reason to get divorced, and that's a legit thing. He's sleeping with his secretary because there's something wrong in the marriage. That, you know, and if you don't want to look at that, because you have some culpability in that, and it's easier to just go, oh, this harlot came and took him away, and it's a lot easier to say that. But the truth is, you stopped paying attention, and this is the question I find myself when I have a minute, with a client who I've been some miles with. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting outside of the courtroom waiting for the case to be called. And I have enough of a rapport with them, and we've been enough of a distance together that I feel like I can be candid with them. I'll say to them, was there a moment where you realized your marriage was over? What was that moment, And you would be amazed at the insight if people think about that question that they give to you. I had a woman who said to me, and it was, to me, a very powerful example. I discuss it a little bit in the book. She said, there was a kind of granola that she liked. And you could only get it at like a certain store, like a Whole Foods or something like that. And her husband used to always buy it. Whenever she was running low, she would just open the cabinet and there'd be another bag of it there. And she loved that. Because he didn't say like, oh, and look, honey, I bought your granola. Like, I get credit for that. He just would do it. He just saw that this was something that he was paying attention. He just saw that there was this little thing, and it was this little kindness that he showed her that let her know she was important to him. He was still kind of trying to woo her without being obvious about it, and he was still paying attention. And she said then one day, she just ran out of the granola and it wasn't there. So she thought, oh, well, maybe he's like busy and he just didn't notice. So she kind of left the bag out. And, sure enough, he still didn't replace the granola. And she said she had a tangible memory. It was about a year before the actual divorce, but she said she had a tangible memory where she thought, okay, this is over. This thing is over now. And I think that's the thing. That's kind of, if you boiled my book down, one of the things I say to people is, there's this thing in every relationship, some little thing that you did for your partner, or some little thing that you just had to tell them, that at some point you just stop telling them.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just in the morning saying like, God, you're so pretty when she walks by, or if it's her saying to you like, oh, I love your strong arms, or whatever it might be. Like, there's just those little things. Like we just want someone cheering for us. We just want, why do we get together? We want connection. We just want connection. Like, there's no other reason to get married other than wanting connection. So those little disconnections, that's the ad, and it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, and that's the challenge for me is that's what people need to sort of find their way to connect to again.
Yeah. When you have a life partner and still have a love story.
Of course. You want the life partner to be a love story too, but the love stories per se are not life stories. It's different ingredients. It's different values. There's some things that you don't need in order to have a beautiful love story with someone.